Hello and welcome to the 966 episode number 129, 129. I'm your host, Richard Wilson. I thank you for listening in. Our 966 audience is large, it is loyal, and continues to grow at a tremendous clip. We are truly grateful. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Let us continue to bring you thoughtful, informed, and timely insight on the remarkable journey that Saudi Arabia is in the midst of. It's an incredible story. Our guest today is my friend Todd Albert Nims, who is many, many things, apart from being Saudi Arabia's cinema OG. And just to embarrass you, Todd, I'm going to read your short bio from the American Chamber of Commerce, AmCham KSA website, because it captures it. Quote, an award-winning creative executive blazing new trails in the cinema and immersive design spaces, Todd Nims has produced notable work such as movies Jude and Born a King, as well as created Saudi Arabia's first large-scale, fully immersive theatrical production, a supernatural murder mystery, Bait el-Dahalizi. In addition to his role as chair of the American Chamber of Commerce in Saudi Arabia's Arts, Culture, and Entertainment Committee, Mr. Nims is owner of Empty Quarter, a Saudi-based production company, and is a guest lecturer for cinematic science at KAUST, unquote. Hello, my friend. Welcome to the 966.
Hi, hello. It's good to be back. We'll have a lot to catch up on, I think, since you were just telling me before we started this, it's been a year and a half, and I'm surprised it seems like yesterday we talked. So it's good to be back.
It's true. Last time it was December 2022, and I was really surprised. And the pace of the change there, lots has gone on. Last time I saw you, I think was last year. I think we went out and had something to eat. I was thinking about you and your FJ Cruiser. Wondering if you'd been out to the desert of late.
I did my yearly Rub al Khali trip. I guess that's been a few months ago now, but we did a New Year's Rub al Khali trip, which is the usual trip we do, and spent about 5 days, 4 nights in the desert. And it was fantastic this year.
It's just beautiful. Priceless. Well, so we're going to dive in. We're going to turn this over to Todd, but I want to give some context. Part of the motivation to get together again is that last month was the 6th year since theaters were reopened in Saudi Arabia after a 35-year hiatus. This is 6 years, and these are just numbers, but they're important numbers because it reflects the extraordinary pace of change. So during that 6-year period, revenue has been $986 million, almost $1 billion. Over 61 million tickets have been sold. 1,971 films, almost 2,000 films have been screened. 45 of those are local productions. And just in the last year alone, 19 local films. Saudi Arabia now has 66 movie theaters with approximately 618 screens and just over 63,000 seats. Operators are around 6 companies and facilities in 22 cities. So these are numbers, they're stats, but they're useful because this is extraordinary. This is a real market now, and it has its own weight. And we're going to start with Todd. Todd is into so many things, but also what just recently happened earlier this month, May, was the 10th Saudi Film Festival, which actually predates the Red Sea International Film Festival by a good bit, and is sort of that. When I say Todd Albert Nims is the OG of Saudi cinema, it's because he was there at the beginning. So you were there at the first one, 2008, 10th Saudi Film Festival. Can you tell us a little bit about this one and how it's evolved?
Yes, I could tell you pretty well because I was firsthand, like you said. I was there at the first one. So Ahmed Al-Mula, the gentleman who started the festival, he used to be the head of the Dammam Cultural Society. That was they used to have the precursor to the Ministry of Culture and all these things way back when was the Dammam Society, the Saudi Society for Arts and Culture, I guess. And they had, locations in cities throughout, Riyadh and, throughout the kingdom, I guess. But they were just very small, kind of didn't do a lot. And Ahmed got it in his head that, we should do a film festival. He kind of asked the head of the society at the time, and he said, look, okay, do it, but kind of we don't want to hear about it. Do it, but don't make a fuss, just quietly invite people. We we don't want to hear news reports. We don't want to just do it. You have our blessing, but don't make it a big deal. So at that time, my first movie, I had just screened it, and I'd been invited to Riyadh to screen it. And so this was like a few months before they were doing the festival. Then I screened it to that public screening in February 2008. And I met with a couple local filmmakers, and I just was invited to come to Dammam and be there and check out all the local films. And it was this at the society, and it was in one room, and they had a screen set up and a projector and some speakers, and that was the festival. There was a lot of people played their local films. I mean, we have to remember that the Dubai Film Festival had 1 year at that point, and there was again a lot of this was the time of DSLR filmmaking, so it just really kind of started to come into its own. So people with photography cameras were able to make movies, and a lot of Saudis and photographers were starting to make films and edit them on their own computers. It was like that was all fairly new stuff because technology had really lowered the cost. So people were making movies, and that was what they were screening, and that was even before subtitles. So I had to ask a lot of people what the hell was going on. And they had an award and everything. They had this award. It was the award they still have, the Golden Palm. And what's crazy is you got to think that's 2008. And then this year, 2024, which is not 10 years later, of course, is the 10th anniversary. Right. So if that doesn't give you a hint as to how much of a struggle and what he was doing was really unique and couldn't really happen every year, nothing else could, because obviously they weren't able to have it every year. So it was off and on. They had to stop it for a few years. I believe they did it the next year in 2009, and then they stopped it for a few years, and they did another one, and then they stopped it. And it wasn't until I started working at ITHRA in 2010, and then I think it took us 2 years before I finally got with Ahmed, and we were able to quietly do a deal between ITHRA and Saudi, them within him, and to bring the festival kind of under ITHRA's wing. But even then, we didn't have ITHRA in the first; it wasn't open. But we were quietly helping to fund it without saying we were funding. We said, okay, we want to be a part of it, but don't say anything. It was still like, we don't associate ITHRA with it. And I think that was like we did that maybe the first time in 2014, I want to say. So maybe 15, maybe it was 15. Anyway, even that.
Todd, tell the audience what ITHRA is.
Sure. Okay. So ITHRA, I worked there for about 6 years. ITHRA, or sometimes you hear it, ITHRA means Enlightenment or Enrichment. The longer name for the facility is the King Abdulaziz Center for World Culture. This is a institution that was conceived in 2009, October in 2009, and there was a foundational cornerstone laid. I was kind of hired there as the film producer, it's the title, but really it was developing their cinema and their program and their first feature film and their programming, and kind of doing things like this, bringing in the Saudi Film Festival and kind of getting things going with the film community. And once the building was finally up, which didn't actually open until 2017, because it was such an ambitious building and there were so many things, but this is a world-class, unique institution that had the country's first cinema, which I was privileged to help launch. That's before all the hype. Actually, it was the very first public cinema, I should say. The roof of it is made of a whole botanical garden. The design is a beautiful, it was international competition in Snøhetta, who are the designers out of the same guys that made the BMW Museum and a lot of other iconic buildings. They were the ones who designed this and to build it. It was just, they had to do first evers for many things, actually. In fact, there is an episode on what's that show called? Something like, there's a show about engineering and buildings, like something like I can't remember the name, but it was an episode. There was a whole episode on this building because it is so iconic and so unique. I mean, if you ever have a chance, look it up. It's absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. And if you have a chance to come to Eastern Province, you should see it. It's really different.
Well, and from those humble beginnings in 2008, and you sort of trying to find opportunities when the social environment and everything will allow for it. This year, 76 film screenings. I mean, 53 titles competing for 36 awards. I mean, all sorts of workshops. It's really become quite established and quite a big deal.
Yeah, so I do want to say a little bit about this year, which is amazing. Every year it's gotten better and better, and this year was no different. This year was bigger and better than the year before. What I really find unique about the Saudi Film Festival is it is very grounded in the local films. It's a much more modest festival, I would say, than the Red Sea Film Festival. They just don't have the same money and everything that the Red Sea does. That being said, it's very organically grown, and that's something that gives it a nice feel. This year in particular was just touching. They did such a good job on especially the opening was great. They had three things that really touched me in the opening, and I think most people. One was that they had a little video on the history of the festival, and again, starting with 2008, and then kind of you just sort of saw clips of the growth and people talking, and it was very very you could see the growth right from what it was and how a part of what I liked about this video and all three things is they all talked, including this video, talked about the struggle that how things there's a word in they have in Saudi now, and I'm going to forget the name now. It starts with an S, but for the times that were they're calling it the restricted, or it's kind of like the times that were more strict, I guess you could say, basically between 1980 and about well up until maybe 2016 when the religious police lost their ability to arrest people. And that
Right.
time they're giving a name to that now. It's the Safarat. So I'm going to get it wrong. Anyway, I don't want to say it because I'm going to get it wrong. But it starts with an S. They reference that a lot in this. Hey, this we were building this through this time, and it was difficult. We faced a lot of challenges, but we knew it was the right thing to do. And now look, it's after everything's accepted. And that was followed by a second kind of after a few more things and a few more opening remarks and other things. Then there was a gentleman that was honored who is a very famous actor in Saudi, who was on this show called Taj Matash, which Taj Matash,
Yeah.
Taj Matash is kind of a comedy show, but it also had a lot of social commentary at a time, again, during this time where it wasn't so easy to talk about things. And they were sort of railing against some of maybe what we're seeing is, some of this restrictiveness that people weren't really feeling, and this guy who was in the show, which I thought all of them were just kind of famous and they didn't have any issues. Again, this video, he opens up about they're giving him this award, but then of course in the film they're showing he's talking about where he came, how he got started, which he was from a small village, and it was really interesting. And a part of it was how at one point he just got lucky, and there was someone that came to town. They weren't casting anybody, but his brother went, "Hey, my brother's he's the only one in town interested in this." And then so the director gave him a chance. He loves this guy, and he starts acting and stuff. Well, his family apparently was not okay with that. He ends up having to run away from home, goes to Kuwait to this drama school, shows up, doesn't have any money to pay for it, and says, "Look, I came here, I don't have any money." He talked about more details. I don't want to go, but of course, how difficult it was to. But in his heart, he knew this was what he wanted to do, and he kept doing it, and he was successful at it. But even then, he was a success. No one was proud of his success, and how touched he was now that things have opened up. But people now, all of a sudden, in the recent years, are starting to say, "Oh my gosh, we're so proud of you for sticking with what you do. We think you're amazing." And he's not used to getting this kind of praise, and it's been touching him. And he was overwhelmed with all this praise. Well, the video ends, and then he gets up on stage, accepts this award, is bringing tears to his eyes, and then he actually turns to the audience and says, "My family's in the audience. This is the first time they have ever come to something physically that I've ever been honored for. And this is the first time I've ever been honored
Oh
in
my.
my life," which is just, you can't, this guy is you just can't believe it. Someone that supposedly is so famous is having this happen in her struggle at home. Then there was a third video that was the film they screened at the very end of the opening, and it was a documentary film, which I have never done that before. Actually, it's always been fictional narratives, or narrative, or what we call narratives here. So it's not a documentary. This was a great documentary because it was on music, and it was on Saudis who were doing music and have been doing music from the 90s or 80s all the way up until now. And it was a very similar theme, right? They were also talking about the restricted times. These guys were talking about how they just loved music and they started falling in love with it, and how music's their life, and they started playing it, and they all learned instruments. It followed about 7 different people. One of them, funny enough, was this gentleman who still has a metal band, heavy metal band, called Wasted Land. And I known him ever since 2008. In fact, I was the first person to ever interview him way back then, because I was looking into doing a documentary on music and stuff back then, which ended up becoming a narrative. So it got shifted. His mother was sick and he wasn't sure if he could continue with the band, but then they got this call from Dubai. They were doing a battle of the bands, and they wanted like a heavy metal battle of the bands, and they wanted their band to come because they'd heard things about them. So they get invited, and his mom dies 2 weeks before this concert. And the band's saying, don't come, you don't have to come. Don't worry, we don't have to do it. Like, we understand. He says, no, I want to do it. And he gets up there, and he said something just opened up inside him, and he sang his heart out, and they won. They won. They won the whole thing.
This is made for the movies.
It really, and it was just touching. I think there wasn't a dry eye in the room, because of just the whole. I mean, his one among many stories that were touching in that documentary, and a lot of those people I knew. Funny enough, some of the women actually have gone, like a DJ, female DJ, and another woman who's gotten big with her music and film. So it was just great because it all had that similar theme of, and they were all saying the same thing of, look, people were telling us these things were wrong, but we knew inside they weren't wrong. They were right. We should be doing it. And now we're so happy that everyone looks to us and is saying, we're proud of you. Keep going. And even though it wasn't the case before, to have that feeling now is special. And I think that's what everyone feels. It did remind me, though, I have to say, it reminded me of, because I was in the middle of all that back then. So I remember that feeling in a different way. I mean, I'm an expat, but I used to get a similar type feeling from, well, what are you doing this stuff in Saudi? And why are you thinking there's no future in doing it? And
as you say, it's more local. It seems to have been a sort of a lifeline and a platform for many people. But it really is interesting now that we're on the other side, quote unquote, post 2016, where you can talk about the restricted times. You can talk about the hardships. You can talk about how people didn't feel comfortable, putting themselves out there, but that they were still creating. And I think that's really interesting takeaway from that. So let's, by the way, I don't know when we should work in your star turn for NBC. But we should work it in at some point.
The Saudi Film Association building in Khobar, that's a private, I think, or it's a nonprofit, which is going to be a great home for the filmmakers in Eastern Province.
This is the 966. We talk about U.S. interests. We talk about our relationship with Saudi Arabia. So the U.S.-Saudi Film Forum is compelling. But the Gulf Film Festival, again, because Saudi Arabia, really wants to be the nexus of the region. And so it goes out and get these things. What is the Gulf Film Festival? Is this the first one?
The Gulf Film Festival is a bit of a one-off in Saudi because it is a regional festival. I wasn't even aware of this till we went to it. So this is the 4th one they've had, but the last time they had it was probably in 2009 or 10 or something. It's been a while, maybe 11, but it was a while back. They kind of revived it to have it in Riyadh. They had it already in Qatar, I think, once in Qatar, once in Dubai, and once in Abu Dhabi, if I'm not mistaken. So this was the 4th one in Riyadh. It's a bit of, it's much more of less of an established, it's sort of a thing where they screen a lot of golf movies and they have a few workshops. But I wouldn't say it's as organized, or largely organized or attended as something that's like a more in another city too. It wouldn't be in Riyadh, it would be in Jeddah or Kobar or something. So
So
it was great. It was a good showcase. It's just another thing they had this year. Like since we last talked, I briefly mentioned they had this last, basically between November and now or May last year, they had the Saudi, they had the Ignite series, Ignite the Film, which was that was a big thing on kind of filmmaking. And got to be a part of putting that together and moderating that. And then we did also there was the Saudi Film Confex, which was put together, Saudi Film Commission, which was kind of, again, a little bit about Saudi film, almost like a mart, like a place with all the mart. It was like all the business side of the way. And they had some talks as well, panel discussions, a lot of showcasing. And then they had the Saudi film, it's called the Film Criticism Conference, which was kind of unique. I don't even know if they've ever had that kind of thing anywhere, but it was getting all the film critics, which a lot of people don't really listen to anymore, but they've brought down here to Saudi to, talk about film and criticize film. And these are the people that, write the columns, right, for film,
right.
critiques. And it used to be a big thing that people used to pay attention to. And I don't think it is much anymore. Now it's more Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb stars and everything. But they're still a thing, right? And I think in the Middle East, especially, they brought a lot of the Arab ones and talked about that. And like we just said, then there's the Gulf Film Festival. And before that, to bring it around full circle to what you asked about, is the first U.S. Saudi Film Forum was held last year, almost around this time. It was June 1st and June 2nd of last year. And what that is I applied for a U.S. government grant about 2 or 3, well, I guess it would be 3 years ago now, from the chamber, from the American Chamber, and got it from the State Department to put this forum together, which really is a series of things we do throughout the year, but it ends in this big forum in Riyadh. And what it was and what it is I've obviously been in this industry a long time. I've seen everyone I've been with, we've always talked from the beginning since I got here in 2007. I always talk to people, we want to make this an industry. And everyone that's what we always talk about. All us old timers, quote unquote, from the industry are always talking about being an industry. And that's really the focus of this forum. It's really getting all the private and public sector heads, as well as some of the U.S. industry heads that are on the business side, together. So it's not the actors, it's not the directors, it's the producers, it's the legal side, it's the government regulators, it's everyone from the U.S. It's the U.S. industry and the Saudi industry. See how we get together and grow the industries. We have round table discussions. There are 4 round table discussions where we hit up actual challenges to growth in these different areas. So, for instance, last year we had some great people come down, and we did one session on legal issues, one on co-production, one on finance, and one on distribution. And we had different U.S. representatives that were key players in those areas. So share how we do it in a way, how it's working, what's happening right now on the U.S./international side. And then we're turning around to our local counterparts comparing, is that what's going on here? And where are the differences, where are the similarities, and do we need to shift so we can all see these things grow together in a way that works? So it's kind of the start of a studio. You have studios, everyone come together and try to make the business environment nice, right? To make it sustainable.
I love this. And this is very much on your producer side. You have your creative side and director side, but
Yeah.
Your producer side is actually trying to make things happen. And this is really critical because these are the folks that come in and can decide, well, all right, what are my incentives to be here? What are the filming sites? Can I get the technical, can I get the crew that's needed to do this locally? What do I need to do? I mean, these are the nuts and bolts of putting on a production that people have to answer before they decide to put on a production. I think it's brilliant that you're bringing them in. And to finish that question, what is their take? And are they saying, so in other words, are they going, okay, well, this is ready for prime time? Or are they saying, well, you still need this, you still need that?
So that's why this is needed, because there's a lot of misunderstandings on both sides. There's also a lot of gaps on both sides. And the truth is people that want to do business or want to do films here from the U.S. or internationally. Also, the Saudis that want to do stuff perhaps with U.S. companies are productions, international productions or co-productions. Everyone wants to get the correct, up-to-date situation from people that don't have a vested interest in either side. That's what we're trying to do, is try to say, hey, listen, you might have heard about such and such incentives and they're happening, but right now there's, these are the challenges and you're hearing it from but these are being fixed by, and the great thing is the people that are doing them are saying, yes, we these are the things and we're actually fixing it by this and this and this. So you're hearing live from everybody, and we're actually solving and resolving problems in real time. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. So we had one of the top entertainment companies in Hollywood for legal firms, D.L. Piper, Tom Arr from D.L. Piper. He's a guy that does movies and also he's big in gaming as well. We walked through some of the legal journey of a film, and we looked at, kind of, because there's a lot of contracting in any film and all different levels, from both just making the film and also to getting distributed. And we looked at and then we had the local law firms talking about, okay, this is what we're doing. And then we realized through that, one of the challenges that came up is like, there's not standardized contracting that melds well with international contracts. Also, even locally, they're all different contracts and not always protecting everybody, and et cetera, et cetera. What we need, since Saudi industry is so, let's say, it's growing right now, standardized contracts and help it grow huge, right? So to have the sort of a base template of contracts across the chain that would allow people to, producers and others to use at least the template contract, still go to a lawyer to get it tweaked a little, that works both with international players and locally, would be fantastic. Well, guess what? A lot of the local legal firms after this got together and they said, this is going to make it cheaper for us. Let's all pitch in and create some template contracts. So they did that. And that's one of the things we're going to announce as a win from last year. But by acknowledging this was a challenge and it would help a lot, that's kind of when it was acted upon by a lot of the private and sometimes the public. The government side has done things as well, because we have the Film Commission, we have the Saudi Authority for Intellectual Property, we have the Cultural Development Fund, we have all the, and we also have NBC, we have Telfaz 11, we have Mirkat, we have all the Saudi side. And this year we've got a great lineup this year. I'm very excited because we've got basically the head of one of the Hollywood's most powerful PR firms is going to walk through the entire. They were responsible, or one of the people that helped win Parasite, the Korean foreign film, an Oscar. Yeah. They did the PR work behind that, which is an important aspect of winning an Oscar. You wouldn't know that, but it is a major component. It's not as simple as having a good film.
Right.
So the idea there is that by walking that through that journey, then that would be a similar path for a Saudi film, for example. Maybe there's one not ready yet, but by knowing the steps from now, everyone will know, okay, this is what we've got to do, because there's a lot of pre-planning you have to do and all these kind of things. So we're going to kind of walk through that, and then also look at what's being done locally for these kind of things as well for their films. We have also the head of business affairs and legal and business affairs for Netflix MENA region, which is fantastic because she's been in the region for a long time she's on the side of both dealing with legal matters and kind of the money matters and making everything work. And that's really going to explain. So she's going to walk through, we're going to look at a lot of what studios and streamers are looking for in the MENA region, and then compare what the locals are looking for, and kind of walking through that, what can work. And I think that's going to be a great session. We have the executive director of the California Film Commission, which is huge because obviously they do a lot in California. California is the biggest, still the center of film for the U.S. and arguably the world. So that we hope will mesh well with. They work with, for example, a lot of nonprofits, and they work with all obviously regulations, and as does the Film Commission here. So there's going to be sort of some parity roundtable sessions on that, where we all talk about those things. And then we've got the head of one of the executives from the Motion Picture Association coming, which they represent all the big studios and regulations and law they need. So that'll be great too, because that's of course they're always dealing with how the regulatory environment can help or hurt a country's business when it comes to film and working with all. So it's a solid lineup. It's definitely is on the business side. I am also on the creative side. That's the part I love and I will always be dedicated to. But it does take both. Unfortunately, I can do both, and we need, if we want to make it an industry here, we need to have this. So last year, we have a report that we put out last year, the U.S. Saudi Film Forum Report 2023, that has a list of all the challenges that were brought up and all the real-time recommendations that were brought up by the group. It's a group of about 40, 50 people that are all the executives, plus the U.S. industry. So we've provided that to several studios now, and on the U.S. side, and other prominent producers, as well as giving it back to the Saudi, because they want to see those too. Because what you need on both sides is sometimes you think, oh, I'm the only production company facing this, or I'm the only producer facing, or I'm the only lawyer facing these issues in the industry. And what's nice is you're all there agreeing, yes, these are issues. And oh, by the way, that the guys that can solve it are saying this is what we'll do, or we recommend to you, this is what you can do. And so it's good because it's not just NBC saying it, or not just Telfaz, or not just everyone's agreeing, yeah, this is a challenge, and here's also recommendations. So it's nice because you put those things forward, and it can be sort of, okay, this is, so I think this last year we marked where we were. Hopefully this year we're going to revisit some of those things and also discuss a lot of other areas as well.
I love this because, again, something we talk about in the 966 a lot. There's many, many goals. Vision 2030 is rife with massive, ambitious goals. We're really interested in implementation, and this speaks directly to implementation of their goals in terms of filmmaking for the country and that sort of thing. So I think it's really important. I want to get to two more questions and run through them. You mentioned the Cultural Development Fund, headed by a investment group as well as a media ventures group. So the reason I ask is not so much specific on this fund, but they're putting a lot of money into the system. Is it getting through? And is it being felt? I mean, there's making tremendous investments, and we've seen Saudi Arabia, go full bore on things like, tourism and entertainment, and so when they commit, they commit. Is that getting into the system? People are seeing this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that particular fund has really yet to. I know they announced it again in February. It still hasn't launched, from my understanding. That being said, when it comes to, there are prominent funders that are definitely funding. There's the Red Sea Film Festival, there's the Saudi Film Festival, there's ITHRA itself, and there's the Saudi Film Commission that have all been offering, grants and funds that you can apply for your films, which, as a filmmaker, that's what you would do, and hope that you get your project is something that's selected. So it's getting out there. If anything, we are in an environment where you still need that, because although it is maturing, I don't think there's a lot of private investment just yet into films. Right. There might be some private investment into some infrastructure things and the tools to make films and things like that. But private investment in films is not really a huge thing just yet.
So funds like this,
it will need that.
Yeah, funds like this are
a
catalyst.
Yes, and that fund is meant to be run, it's meant to be run for profit. Even though the CDF, the Cultural Development Fund's putting that 30-40%, whatever it is. I thought it was 30%, but if it's 40%, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
they're putting that in. It still needs to be a profitable venture, which is good. I mean, if part of their remit would be to invest in local films, and that's what should start happening.
Right. And again, you put those two things together, the U.S. Saudi Film Forum and investing and, trying to get the practical aspects, because the whole point of it is not Saudi Arabia has national priorities and wants to accomplish things, but investors need to make money. So, trying to get those to match up is critical.
Look, Saudi's running 1,000 miles a minute. So it's still, that's why we're having these talks, to try to catch make sure we're all on the same page and the business priorities are being ticked off, and they are, but sort of raising the flags on what's the most important things first, because it's like anything, there's a checklist, and especially international film people, they want to come in, but they need to see, it's like anything, you want to see consistency, you want to see a safe environment, you want to see your needs met. And that's where I don't want to say, I want to make sure if I sell someone something that it's legit, right? As a local. So
briefly, I wanted to talk about Nora. Nora is the first Saudi film screened at Cannes this year. And it sort of wraps up a lot of what we're talking about, because this was a film, and you know this better than I'm just, by a well-known director, Tawfiq El-Zaidi. And the story is about the restricted times, that you reference, but also it's interesting, again, because a number of themes you've touched on about, this is a well-established director. He's being recognized for this. This is a big deal. He's taught the movie is about when artistic endeavors were really suppressed. But also, interestingly enough, it sort of got a bounce. Nora got an award from the Saudi Film Commission, back in 2019. So it got some support to move forward, and now it's being screened. It was screened at Cannes, which is kind of the whole story written in a little thing right here. It's quite a success.
It's another stake in the ground for the Saudi film industry, right? I mean, every little bit helps. We've seen a lot of things since we talked last, really. Yeah. I mean, this is what we've seen since we chatted last was what I think I was even hoping would happen. I think we discussed it, but I can't remember. I had to listen to our former conversation, but one of the things that happened is that the Saudi film Sitar broke all the box office records for the Middle East, right? They literally became the second best selling film of all time. The only thing that's surpassed it is Top Gun for the MENA region, right. The new Top Gun. And that's a huge thing to say. It's beat out all other Hollywood films. And it's not just it's a number 2 film, not just Arab film and it just shows that Saudi film now is it's not only the biggest box office, also the dominating film type all of a sudden, right? Now, all of a sudden, Saudi films are selling better than any film in the entire market. So that's a huge shift, and that will bring more private investment. You had on top of that, before this, you had a few wonderful films were released this year. They got a lot of critical acclaim. Naga, you've got, and then you had, oh my God, what's Ali Keltami's film? Mandub, which is like Delivery Guy, did really well. It was at the Toronto Film Festival. It got recognized. Both of them did. And then now Nora, which is now, screening it, been accepted as a feature to screen at Cannes. We have had Saudi films shorts do that, but this is a feature, which is a new thing, and that's fantastic. I hope they win. The awards haven't been given out or anything, but they if they win something, that's even better. But I do think you're going to see more of this coming down the pipeline. With the more Saudi movies are made, the better they're going to get, the more international reach they're going to acquire, and I'm hoping to see a Saudi at the Oscars one day. I don't know if it'll be next year or it'll be 10 years from now, but who knows? But I do think there's a chance if this continues the way it is. There is an environment right now, even in the current environment doesn't grow anymore. There is an environment in which there is sustainable production right now on, movies that you can just sell locally that can, you can make a profit on, which is very important, because that means that some of these studios can be making movies full time and sustain themselves. That's a huge. The box office is already there, and that's a big difference alone right there.
So, Todd, I want to close on, I don't think we can really end this discussion without spending a little time on the Middle East Broadcasting Company's monumental 21-episode series, Al-Sharar.
Okay, here we
21 go, episodes set in early 1900s in central Saudi Arabia, an extraordinary story just again of epic proportions. And I hear there's an especially well played character in that series, a Western explorer. I'm not sure. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Now you're really making me blush. This is great. So I had the great privilege of being an actor in this with these one of these Ramadan epics.
Yeah.
Historically, NBC for years now has played these kind of. They usually all take place around this time period of like early 1900s. Usually they're Syrian dramas or Turkish dramas or Egyptian or Lebanese or etc. And there are only like this is one of the first, if not like a very like they've kind of only done like a couple things like this now, where it's been this is of the central Saudi Arabia taking place. It's fictional, but it's also has aspects that are obviously it's from that time. That's the genre. It's a period piece. I do play a character named Mark. I don't play a Saudi. I play a Westerner in the show. And I'll have to tell you how this happened. I got a call from NBC, and they say, "Okay, hey, we'd like you to come in and talk." So, I sit there, and they, "Oh, for an acting role, okay, great." Because I have done like, I'm very multi hyphenated. I did like acted in Hambala and Timsah and a few other things in the past, and I've actually provided a lot of, overseen a lot of actor training, been involved in actor training and directed at actors and stuff with, and so it's not like I'm unfamiliar with the art of acting. However, they kind of surprised me with like a pretty good role. I mean, I'm in almost the whole series, so
Wow.
I was. But they approached me, and then I said, okay, let me meet the director. I like him; he's a very grounded guy. And then he explains to me, this is a time period. I'm going, I like this time period. Yeah, you're playing a Western. Okay, good, check. And my buddy Khalid Segar, he's an actor who's pretty well known. And when I used to work at ITHRA, we provided 3 years of this actor training with the London, the National Youth Theatre out of London. We used to bring them over and do actor training. And a lot of these guys that are actually well-known actors now, some of them have, Khalid Segar is one of them. So I've known him for years, probably 10, 15 years or 12 years, something like that now. And he's in it. So I was already like, hey, great. So this guy's telling me, you're going to play this Western, and here's kind of the story. I was like, okay, wow, this is great. And then he goes, and you're going to, we're going to give you sword fighter training, and you're going to ride horses. And I just said, I'm in. Really? I'm in. And that is when he laid it on me. Because, and you're going to do Arabic the entire time. Oh, God. Okay. But it was great. They gave me 3 months of tutoring. Mark's character, he is kind of a photographer / he's supposedly British. I don't speak any English really in the whole thing. So I'm speaking Arab, Saudi and Najdi Bedouin Arabic, which is unique that I can actually speak that. And I think that's one of the reasons people surprisingly like what I'm doing, because I don't have any other kind of accent. I definitely sound like a Saudi speaker because I didn't learn it any other way. A lot of Westerners sound like Egyptians.
Exactly.
Or Jordanians,
they learn the classical.
Or right. Something. Yeah. So, or Fusha, right?
Yeah, Fusha.
I don't sound that way. I sound very local. So I think that's why people really liked it. But I was surprised at the response to my character in particular. First of all, I think the show exceeded my expectations. I didn't realize it was going to be so well shot. The cinematography is really, really good. The quality is great. And so is the sound design, both fantastic. And it's written by a Saudi female, so the whole thing's and there's a lot of female interaction and drama in there. Yeah. My character in particular, he's friends with the sheikh, one of the local tribes. He's been in the region a while. You could tell they're friends. It doesn't really show much of the backstory, but you could tell they're close. The sheikh and this guy. And my character falls in love with a local girl, and from the sheikh's same village. And I was surprised at how much people related to my character, because in Fallout, I don't want to give the whole thing away, but basically, he falls in love with a local girl. He converts to Islam. He also fights on the side of the sheikh. And still, through all this, even when he fights and is helping fighting these battles, and he's now a Muslim and all these things, the father or the girl still rejects him. And it isn't until they go through something completely different where we don't know what's really going to happen, but their lives are threatened together, the father and him. that the father finally starts to turn the corner. But I think that I didn't think of it at the time in a bigger sense, but we have to remember that they're Saudi, like a lot of places in the world. Um, you know, there's a lot of this where you fall in love with somebody and they're from the different tribe,
Sure.
or they're from the different part of Saudi, or a different nationality, or this is the extreme, right? A Westerner, right? And non-Muslim, and then but the fact that they're making the converting and showing that they want to be they want to make the effort to do it. And a lot of people felt for this character, because and this situation, because it's one of the reasons why I think Titanic, if any Saudi will tell you this, was probably one of the most popular films of all time in Saudi. For years, people talked about it because it's that love story, this Romeo and Juliet type story. Anyway, I think I was surprised at how touched, and I've had a lot of friends in the West that have seen it now, and they surprisingly, I thought they were just going to check out maybe my episode, see a couple things with me. They gotten into the show and they love it. They were really hooked on it after the first few episodes. They said, "God, this is really good."
I think that's
So
outstanding. That's
I'm
outstanding.
happy. Have you seen? You probably haven't seen it, but you'll have to.
I
You'll
will.
have to check it out.
Well, with that, I have to see it, and I didn't realize that the part was that big. But this is great. But anyway, Todd Albert Nims, storyteller, creator, director, producer, now movie star. Todd, just wonderful to be with you again. I just think it's fitting that you're at the heart of all this change, and given that you, as I said, you were Saudi cinema OG. You were there at the beginning, and it's wonderful to see it coming together. It's wonderful to see all the things you're doing to help it come together. Just really impressive.
Well, thanks, Richard. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast again. I'm happy to come back anytime. I love what you guys do. Big fan of the 966. I hope it goes many, many more episodes, many more years.
We'll do that. Thanks so much, Todd.